This I've been very, very excited about ever since I've had the opportunity to do a little collaboration with CPA about some enterprise work that I'm very, very excited about. I'm very, very excited to see more and more of our people stepping into this realm. And that's how I know, like, understanding spiritual poverty is so important because so many of our people are moving in this direction and needing this information to build, protect, and pass on all of the hard work that you're doing. And so what it involves is tax planning and preparation, estate planning essentials, and trust planning implementation. So we're going to talk about all of these things as a part of when you're thinking enterprise, when you're moving as an enterprise, when you're growing as an enterprise, it's these three things working together. And according to the same book of law that we started off with in the first segment of today's time together, Proverbs also reveals that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, right? So this is actually something that we should desire. We should desire that the things that we're working and we're laboring for during this lifetime, the things that we are growing, those resources that we have opportunity to steward well, as Sister Fatea was discussing during her leadership training. The reason for it is for the next generation. So you are good when you're leaving that work of your hands behind for the next generation. Why you need a tax pro? And I know that everybody here has already heard me talk about it, but I'm just going to say it again and again and again for the sake of those who are joining this conversation later, that you need to be planning your annual federal taxes as a business owner, because when it's not being taken out of your check like it used to be, or if you're not structured in certain ways, then tax season could be very traumatizing for business owners who have not planned. And so your tax professional, for me, I prefer working with CPAs, but the other tax professionals can help with things like bookkeeping and tax planning as well. But planning for that the larger chunk of your taxes every year is a very wise strategy to have, and that's why you need a tax pro. You also need a tax pro because a lot of people who file their own taxes, they miss opportunities on different strategies that someone who is trained like a CPA will know and be able to capture for you. I've even heard it said that when it comes to certain like free software that people use all the time that you can access through irs.gov and file your own taxes, that people leave untold amounts of money on the table by doing their own taxes. And it's because, again, the tax person, he's going to know stuff that someone who's not trained in tax law knows in order to help position your company to take advantage of all kinds of stuff. I remember it was recently some type of innovation credit that came out that when it came on Winston's radar, he began talking to our circle of entrepreneurs about, hey, we need to make sure that we're applying for this tax credit for you to reduce your taxable liability. You also need a tax pro to help you with understanding estate taxes. Estate taxes are a space where a tax professional is going to have insight that an attorney is not going to have when it comes to your estate plan. And as your enterprise grows in value, estate taxes become a very real and necessary conversation that you need to have with your tax pro, because there are an untold number of strategies to make sure that what you're leaving to your loved ones when you're gone is going to be more than what the government is taking in taxes. And then you want to maximize your tax credits. Again, the tax professional is going to be doing more than just leaning on the software when looking at your money. They're literally going to be reducing your tax liability. I can't help but sing the praises of Brother Winston, who I've been working with now for 3 years on my taxes. I'm still blown away by how he does what he does. Kind of what I would not have been able to do for myself if I had not invested in his professional care and knowledge in the area of my taxes. So your estate planning is important because whether you thought about it this way or not, you dying and your family having to go to the court to get access to your stuff, it is a tax. It's a tax. It is a tax of your time. It is a tax of the fees that you have to pay to the court. It is a tax if you got to hire an attorney and fight your family because they acting a fool. It is a tax on your time because it does not move quickly. Probate is tax. And this is what happens to your stuff that does not pass with a title or with a beneficiary designation. So the big ones are going to be your house, is going to be even your business. Those things will end up in the probate court if you have not planned an estate. You need an estate plan to minimize uncertainty. Everybody feels like they're your favorite when you died, and that they're to your stuff when you gone. And families have been shattered when a loved one has passed away and nobody knew what they wanted to have done with their stuff. Knowing who you leaving what to and who you trust with taking care of that stuff, it makes the loss of a loved one less traumatizing, because it's already traumatizing when somebody dies. How much more traumatizing is it when nobody knows what you wanted done with your stuff? And a lot of people feel like, well, I don't really have anything. Everybody has stuff. I'm sorry, but if you have a Gmail account, you have stuff. If you have an iCloud account, you have stuff. If you have a Facebook account, you have stuff. Because guess what? Without an estate plan in place and you pass away, the person who was closest to you, who does not know your password and cannot get to your millions of pictures that's on your cloud drive, they will be locked out for eternity until you go pay the probate tax. So I don't care how much stuff you think you don't have, you have stuff. And you centralize important details. I once had a colleague whose brother passed away in another state. She had to travel to go deal with wrapping up his affairs. He wasn't married. He didn't have kids. So it fell on her as the sister. And not only is she having to deal with the crazy of her brother just died unexpectedly, but she's literally in his house having to go through his papers to find out what the heck. Who do you hate that much that you want them to remember you like that? Having an estate plan puts everything in one centralized place, so people are not only crying when you're gone and missing you when you're gone, but having to shuffle through your papers. That's why an estate plan is very important. And it's also important to protect from future waste. Because that probate tax that we talked about, that's waste. When you have people who get access to your money before they're ready to get it, they go and spend it. The young folk, right? You don't want to have $100,000 falling into the hands of a 19-year-old. But having a proper estate plan is going to put some safeguards in place so that they don't get it until they're ready and according to your instructions. So this is why the estate plan is important. And that's when we start talking about trust planning. When we're talking about your business and we're talking about what happens after you're gone, what your legacy looks like, this is where we get into talking about the world where the estate plan and the business plan come together. And what a trust is, it's very, very simple. A trust is a contract. It's a contract between you and your stuff, where you release ownership of your stuff in a legal document. You're saying, I'm no longer the owner of it, right? And it was so interesting to me, Sister Patea, that in your training, you were talking about you don't really own anything anyway. You know, we're all here as stewards. We don't own anything. But what a trust actually does, it documents the reality that you don't own it. And now you make a contract saying, I don't own it. So that's what a trust is. And the trust has A separation of ownership from control is what it is. And this is very important and advantageous, just depending on your goals and your needs and your stuff and the people that you're leaving stuff to. But what it does, it avoids probate. That for me, that's the number one thing. Keep your family out of probate court by any means necessary. Number two, it protects your stuff from judgment under certain situations. There's a lot of hype and a lot of buzz in the streets that if you don't want to get sued or lose your stuff in a lawsuit, it needs to be in the trust kind of thing. But not all trusts qualify for that kind of treatment. And there's a lot of different kind of trusts. But if structured the right way, then yes, it can protect you from losing your stuff if you're sued and you lose in a lawsuit. It also provides you with privacy in a public record. For some people, especially who are kind of like big in real estate investment and not really wanting people to be able to look their name up in public records because people are internet snooping and trying to get in your business. Well, this is one great way to protect your privacy because property records are public and everybody can go and find out stuff by your name. They can find out how much your stuff is worth. They got find out how much your taxes are. Like when it comes to property ownership, there is no privacy when you own real estate in your name. And then there is the public benefits eligibility. This is a very nuanced and special area of trust and estate planning when you have someone in the family who may be disabled and receiving Social Security or Medicaid or Medicare. These particular programs are very, very sensitive to income. And so you can do to a disabled person when you just leave them money because they could disqualify them from continuing to receive their public benefits. And so trust planning is a way of making sure that you can leave that gift, but they can still keep their public benefits. So these are just some of the benefits of control. And then here is what a trust is. Literally, like I'm giving you this is how it was taught in law school. A trust has a grantor, the person who owns the stuff, right? The record owner. The grantor is the person who is releasing their ownership. The trustee is the person who receives the right to control and steward the property. And there has to be a beneficiary. And the beneficiary is the person who has the right to the benefit of whatever profit, whatever the property is, that's the beneficiary. And then it has to be executed. It needs to be signed by the grantor and by the trustee. And it has to be notarized. And that's how a trust, these are all of the elements that a trust needs in most states. So with enterprise structure, why I'm so excited about having this conversation about business and taxes and that is because this is what, as your income is growing in your business, these four things can be structured together for maximizing how much wealth you're passing on to the next generation, or you have access to continue to buy assets and build make your money work for make your money work for you, and reduce way down your tax liability and keeping Uncle Sam out of your pocket. And so that's going to be your operating company. That's either going to be your LLC or your corporation. All of us here have LLCs. So that would be your operating company. And then you will have a holding company. The holding company is where all of your stuff is actually owned, your intellectual property, your equipment, your accounts would all be in the holding company. And at the point where your tax pro recommends that you need someplace for overflow, because now as you've been growing income, your tax is looking kind of like, it's only so much I'm going to be able to keep this down for you. A holding company becomes a part of your tax strategy. And then the holding company sets up a trust. And the trust owns all of the assets of the holding company. So instead of everything being owned in your name, everything is now being held by a company solely for the purpose of holding stuff, who then sends your stuff to a trust. And you're going to see the reason why in just a minute. And then you have the family living trust, which is going to be what owns your personal stuff versus your business stuff. So business stuff is owned in the holding company trust. Personal stuff is held in the family trust. This is the enterprise setup. And this isn't the only way, but this is a beautiful, beautiful strategy which became necessary when I began to discuss one of my clients who has an enterprise structure, and the tax pro and I had to get together to figure out how to save our client on taxes. So it begins with the holding company, right? This is your primary account on the banking side. Your holding company owns the account. And in your holding company trust, rather than working as an employee who is taxed at a higher tax percentage, you are earning income as a trustee who is earning or being taxed at a lower tax bracket. Trustees are taxed at a lower rate than employees. At a certain point, again, an S corp kind of becomes a place where you want to be paid by your company. When your company is making a certain amount of money, S corp limits the taxable income that's coming into your business, and you're only taxed on your actual income or your wages that your company pays you. But at a certain point, the S corp is not saving you enough on tax, and then you need to consider setting up a holding company and being paid as a trustee instead of as an employee, because it starts making sense on the tax planning side. And what the holding company trust does is it makes your family trust the beneficiary. So that according to the instructions that are set up in there, upon the death of whoever, these proceeds go to this person. Or it doesn't necessarily have to be after somebody's death. It could be a continuity plan, a succession plan. There's no one size fits all when it comes to trust planning. But ideally, the beneficiary of the business trust, the holding company trust, becomes the family trust. And then on the right side of the screen, you'll see that the holding company is the main account at the bank. And here's one of the things that I've heard from more than one CPA at this point. A lot of business owners have different bank accounts and different institutions. It drives CPAs and bookkeepers crazy. The CPAs and the bookkeepers are all saying one bank, multiple accounts. One main account, multiple sub accounts. And when the CPA was explaining to me the beauty of how that main account becomes like the main tax account from the standpoint of reporting all of your income, then all money comes in through your enterprise account. That is your enterprise account. And from this account, you send money to the various different streams of income that you got going on up under your name. So sub account A would be your very, very first LLC. Yes, this is the LLC that has your website and your letterhead and all of the other stuff, how you started your business. But from a banking standpoint, your enterprise account is the one that's sending money or transferring money that's being generated by that first business, sub account A. You continue to grow and you continue to invest and you set up a second business. Well, then you're going to have sub account B. All of the payments are still coming through the enterprise bank account, but the enterprise is transferring that money to sub account B. And this avoids you from having to open up multiple accounts with multiple LLCs at the bank, which can really become burdensome. And this is why our client needed us to help figure this out, because it just started to get too much to stay on top of.
That's not mean to cut you off, but cutting you off. That answered one question that I and my lovely wife had about doing multiple businesses. So thank you.
Yeah, our client was literally going crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome that you two have strategized and come to this consensus, because it's not a lot of people think that, oh, you keep the money separate by having multiple bank accounts. But then, like you said, if you're managing from an enterprise level, which is what we were going to be doing, then it makes sense, because Winston told us the same thing as far as like what we're doing for the contracts that we'll obtain. He's like, just you have the same banking, don't get another bank account, don't do another LLC. You can even manage your enterprise within the one, but it's not relative to what you're doing for the trust and the building. It's just from an enterprise perspective, when we're dealing with multiple projects.
Yes,
So,
the multiple projects, each project has a different bank account in the same bank. So your main account is the enterprise account, and you have
exactly
bank accounts, and you create the separation by what you transfer to from your enterprise account.
Yes.
And this is like after I had talked to the other CPA that I'm collaborating with, and I ran my notes by Wednesday, he was like, yes. It's like, yes. I do not know why people open accounts with different banks. It drives me crazy. So this is what I was learning from both of the CPAs agreeing, have everything in the same bank, open up as many separate accounts as you need to, and then you make the enterprise account transfer money. And what was so beautiful was that in this particular case, all of our clients, businesses or corporations, again, corporations, because of the tax strategy, corporations are taxed at a lower rate. And so as his business is continuing to grow, he has to continue to use different tax planning strategies to reduce his tax liability. But in the case of a corporation, what the CPA is doing is he's taking the money that is being transferred to each account, tracking the amounts that are sent to each account, and issuing K1s, the tax document that's needed to document up on the tax planning side. He issues K1s to all of them. Or in the case that you have a sub account that's not attached to an LLC, or it's not attached to a corporation, it's not attached to an LLC, or it's attached to a project, he can issue a 1099 for that particular purpose. So from the tax planning side, this is the kind of structure that is preferred. And it's an investment on the front end to kind of like, well, when you're dealing with someone who has multiple entities, like what we're working through, and having multiple trusts, it costs, and your tax preparation is going to cost, but the amount that you save on tax justifies the cost for being professionally set up like that. So this is the enterprise structure that I was so excited to share with y'all, because once we put our heads together and we saw how this was going to better serve our client, it was just like, I gotta share this. So how do you get started? All right, Char, I want to trust. What do I do? Take yourself to Rocket Lawyer or LegalZoom, like now. Like, don't wait. If you don't already have a last will and testament, if you don't already have a power of attorney, if you don't already have an advance directive for medical decisions, which is also called a living will in some cases, you can even do your revocable living trust or your first family trust version 1.0. All of that can be done right on Rocket Lawyer or LegalZoom. Just do it. Because this is going to be the first part of your enterprise structure that continues to grow with you as you continue to grow your business. There's no reason not to have these documents in place, because the consequence is probate. The consequence is tax. The consequence is your family fighting and fallout. The consequences is that the business continuing, it hasn't been planned, so it just runs into the ground, and then your customers and clients aren't taken care of. Get this done. Have this done. And while I would say that, these products they're going to get you taken care of in terms of setting it all up. Once you put your information in there, read it. Read and understand how to execute those documents. You're not done once you print them out. You're not done once you create them. Workstate is going to have instructions for things you have to do in order for them to be valid and enforceable. But all of these you need to do right away if you don't already have them. When do I need a holding company? You need to talk to your tax pro. And that's my reason for bringing up the tax professional, because at a certain point, an S corp is going to be a great way for your tax saving strategy, and not without having a holding company. But at some point, the S corp is not necessarily giving you the benefit of the tax savings that it used to, because you're continuing to grow in your revenue and your income, and now you need to start looking at planning a holding company. Now, I hear some people say, well, if you know you want to structure as an enterprise, just go ahead and set it up and structure it first. I have mixed feelings about that, because if you just set up a holding company that you technically don't even really need yet from a tax saving standpoint, then you're still paying the tax of having to renew it every year just to have it for when you need it. And so, I mean, I'm happy to see you set up all your vessels like the widow that Elijah stayed with, and say as many as you can set up, the Most High gonna pour oil into. But as a starting point for a brand new startup, a brand new business, I would take a look at that after your first full year of operations. Talk to your tax professional and see whether or not they would agree that that would be something that's good for you to set up now, just in case for later. So that's my thought on it. I wouldn't say do it now. When do I need a business trust? Again, talk to your tax professional. The business trust is about a tax planning strategy. This is how this project came to me with our mutual client, and here it was not really necessary until it became necessary when our client was exposed to more taxes as a result of the business growing and making more money. So that's what it is. Generally, it's more advantageous for you to be taxed as a trustee rather than as an employee, when that makes sense to take on the type of expense that's involved in setting up a holding company and setting up a holding company trust. It's not cheap. So you want to deal with this as a tax planning strategy when the income and the tax exposure justifies that kind of expense. How do I set up a family trust? This starts with your basic estate plan. When you create your revocable living trust on Rocket Lawyer or on LegalZoom, or if you find any other online quick legal document prepared kind of thing, that's your starting place for your family trust. There's no reason why you should not have that, like, by the time we meet next month. And that revocable living trust becomes the family trust 1.0 for you. It's super duper flexible, and it grows with you as you grow. So this is where the family trust begins, with your revocable living trust. So that's what I have for y'all today. And I'm ready to open this up for any questions.